History remembers kings who inherited the world, but the man who saved the world was sold for a handful of silver. He was an outcast, a slave, a boy with a defect in his eye, yet he would rise to break the unbreakable Mongol horde and forge an empire that would outlast him by centuries. This is the true story of Rukn al-Din Baibars, the Panther of the East. The year is 1223. Born in the fierce Kipchak steppes, young Baibars belongs to a world of endless grass and open skies. But the skies darkened. The Mongol Empire, an unstoppable machine of conquest, swept through the steppes, annihilating his people. Stripped of his family and freedom, he was driven across mountains, destined for the grueling slave markets of the Middle East. In the markets of Anatolia and Syria, he was passed over repeatedly. Buyers saw his eye defect, a cataract, as a flaw. Little did they know, this flawed boy possessed a spirit forged in iron. Eventually, he was bought by an Ayyubid emir. His destiny led him to Egypt, where he was sent to the military barracks of the Ayyubid Sultan Al-Salih Ayyub. Here, on the island of Al-Rauda, the slaves were broken down and rebuilt. They were to become the Bahri Mamluks, the ultimate warrior caste. The training was brutal. Fencing, wrestling, Islamic theology, and absolute loyalty to their master and comrades. Baibars excelled in Furusia, the martial art of the knight. He mastered archery on horseback, a lethal inheritance from his steppe ancestors. He grew into a giant of a man. His imposing height, booming voice, and that piercing, clouded eye struck terror into his opponents. Sultan Al-Salih recognized the raw brilliance in Baibars. He promoted him to his personal guard, the Jamdar. The slave had become a commander, but his greatest test was sailing toward the shores of Egypt. In 1249, the Seventh Crusade, led by King Louis IX of France, landed in Damietta. The Christian armies intended to conquer the Islamic world. The Ayyubid defenses crumbled. The Crusaders marched south, their eyes set on Cairo. Disaster struck. The Sultan died in the middle of the crisis. His wife, Shajar al-Dur, concealed his death to prevent panic. The survival of Egypt fell onto the shoulders of the Mamluks. Baibars stepped forward to architect a lethal trap. He allowed the vanguard of the Crusader knights, led by Robert of Artois, to enter the city of Al-Mansurah unopposed. The Crusaders thought the city was abandoned. They were entirely oblivious to the fact that they had walked into the jaws of the Panther. At Baibars' signal, hell was unleashed. The narrow streets negated the Crusaders' heavy cavalry charge. The Mamluk infantry and cavalry slaughtered the vanguard. The victory at Mansurah shattered the crusade. King Louis IX himself was captured, an unprecedented humiliation for the European powers. But victory brought betrayal. The new Ayyubid heir, Turan Shah, despised the Mamluks and threatened their lives. The Mamluks struck first. In a violent coup, they assassinated Turan Shah, ending the Ayyubid dynasty forever. The slaves were now the masters. Shajar al-Dur briefly ruled, marking the birth of the Mamluk Sultanate. But internal power struggles tore the Mamluks apart. Baibars found himself at odds with the new ruler, Aybak. Forced into exile, Baibars spent a decade wandering as a mercenary in Syria, honing his political and military genius. While the Mamluks bickered, a storm unlike any in human history was brewing in the east. The Mongols were back. In 1258, Hulagu Khan destroyed Baghdad, the heart of the Islamic Golden Age. The caliph was rolled in a carpet and trampled to death. The Mongol horde pushed toward Egypt. Hulagu sent envoys to Cairo with a message of pure terror: surrender or be annihilated. The new Mamluk Sultan, Qutuz, knew that diplomacy with a typhoon was impossible. He recalled Baibars, needing his greatest general. Qutuz cut the Mongol envoys in half and hung their heads on the gates of Cairo. The die was cast. It was victory or extinction. Instead of waiting, Qutuz and Baibars marched the army out to meet the Mongols, a preemptive strike to save the world. September 3, 1260, the two greatest military machines of the Middle Ages met at Ain Jalut, the spring of Goliath. Baibars took command of the vanguard. His strategy, a classic feigned retreat. He hit the Mongols and then pretended to flee. Kipchak, the Mongol commander, took the bait. He ordered his horde to charge into the valley, straight into the Mamluk trap. As the Mongols entered the valley, Sultan Qutuz hurled his helmet to the ground and unleashed the hidden reserves. The trap snapped shut. For the first time in history, the unstoppable Mongol army was surrounded and fought in close combat. The Mamluks employed superior armor, disciplined cavalry, and early hand cannons to break the Mongol formations. Kipchak refused to retreat. He fought until he was slain. The Mongol aura of invincibility was shattered forever. Baibars pursued the fleeing Mongols deep into Syria, ensuring the horde was utterly destroyed. The civilized world breathed a sigh of relief. Ain Jalut saved Islam and perhaps Europe, but in the aftermath, the promise Qutuz made to Baibars to make him ruler of Aleppo was broken. The Mamluk code was ruthless. On the journey back to Cairo, during a hunting trip, Qutuz was assassinated. The path to the throne was clear. Rukn al-Din Baibars entered Cairo not just as a general, but as the Sultan. The slave had become the absolute monarch. His first stroke of genius was political. He brought a surviving member of the Abbasid dynasty to Cairo, reinstating the caliphate and legitimizing his own rule. To control his vast empire, Baibars created the Barid, a sophisticated pony express and intelligence network spanning from Egypt to the Euphrates. He could receive news from the borders in days. His network of spies and carrier pigeons made him omnipotent. He knew his enemies' moves before they did. He was known to wander the streets in disguise, inspecting his domain and listening to the whispers of the common folk. Recognizing the Mongol threat, he allied with the Golden Horde in Russia, who had converted to Islam, splitting the Mongol world in two. He fortified Alexandria, rebuilt the navy, and created an infrastructure of roads and bridges that connected 3 continents. When not at war, he was a fanatic of polo, playing fiercely to keep his cavalry commanders in peak physical condition. His emblem, the walking panther, was carved into bridges, citadels, and coins across the Levant. But his empire was still surrounded. To his west, the Crusaders. To his east, the Ilkhanate Mongols. The Panther prepared to strike. For the next 17 years, Baibars waged a relentless holy war. He launched over 30 campaigns, rarely sleeping in the same bed twice. He did not command from the rear. He dug trenches, aimed catapults, and fought on the walls alongside his men. In 1268, he struck a fatal blow to the Christian presence, capturing Antioch, one of the original and most powerful Crusader states. Then came Croc des Chevaliers, the impregnable fortress of the Hospitaller Knights, a castle that had defied sieges for a century. Baibars could not breach its inner walls by force, so he used psychological warfare, forging a letter from the Crusader commander ordering the garrison to surrender. The trick worked. The invincible fortress fell into Mamluk hands, effectively breaking the back of the Crusader military orders. He even brought the feared Order of Assassins to heel, transforming them from an independent cult into state-sponsored spies. No river, mountain, or fortress could stop him. He moved armies with an unnatural speed, striking when the enemy thought he was hundreds of miles away. He was an administrative machine and a military hurricane. But the relentless pace was taking its toll on the aging sultan. Through blood and iron, he had secured the borders. Now he focused on leaving a legacy etched in stone. Baibars was a devout builder. In the heart of Cairo, he commissioned the majestic mosque of Al-Zahir Baibars, a monument to his reign. He established a unique religious endowment, a massive garden specifically dedicated to feeding the stray cats of Cairo. He expanded agriculture, dug vital canals, and secured the pilgrimage routes to Mecca and Medina, protecting the caravans from bandits. Under his rule, Cairo and Damascus became the undisputed intellectual and cultural centers of the Islamic world. Though notoriously brutal to his enemies and rivals, the common people loved him. He was their protector, the hero who stopped the apocalypse. His diplomatic reach extended to the kings of Aragon, Sicily, and the Byzantine emperor. The slave boy from the steppes was now corresponding with emperors. He had achieved what no Ayyubid or caliph could. He had unified Egypt and Syria into an iron shield. But in 1277, the Mongols of the Ilkhanate invaded Anatolia once more. The Panther was called for his final hunt. At the age of 54, Baibars led his army deep into Anatolia. At the Battle of Elbistan, he met a massive coalition of Mongols and Seljuks. Despite his age, he fought with the ferocity of his youth. The Mongols were crushed, and Baibars marched into the Seljuk capital of Kayseri. He sat on the throne of the Seljuk sultans. He had reached the absolute peak of his power, but the long march had drained him. Retreating to Damascus, a celebratory banquet was held. Accounts vary. Some say he drank a cup of poisoned kumis meant for a rival. Others say he contracted a deadly fever from his relentless campaigning. Within days, the indomitable sultan collapsed. On July 1st, 1277, the Panther drew his last breath. He was buried quietly in the Al-Zahir library in Damascus, his death hidden for weeks to ensure a peaceful succession. From the slave markets of Sivas to the thrones of empires, he didn't just survive history, he wrote it. Rukn al-Din Baibars, the architect of the Mamluk Sultanate, the shield of Islam, and the legend that will never die.